well taken care of with her. So I have to thank you a lot for this. Also, publishers and agents, not because they, you know, I'm supposed to say this, but because it's true. I got some news yesterday about this book being shortlisted for the Commonwealth Writers' Prize, and okay, it felt really good until I realized that I am the only writer from the Caribbean region, from that part of the world, to actually be represented on this prize. So something is happening or not happening in the Caribbean, which is cause for great concern. And the Canadians have it. I'm the only one there with this book battling against the Canadians. I feel a bit powerful, yes, but you know, I feel quite good that the book has gotten there, and it's a book that's taken. But it feels rather lonely, because there was a time when you would expect Caribbean books to be on there from the West Indies. We had great writers, you know, and we still do, but something is not happening, and I don't know what that is. So I'm slightly concerned about that. This book is a book that took me 12 years to write. I wrote other books in between, but this is part of a trilogy of novels which I thought I would write for my country. And it's about the birth of a nation. It's about how Caribbean countries became what they have become, and in a way, why we are such hybrids. We are the kind of people who you find us anywhere. I mean, I was in Burkina Faso a few years ago, and I was kind of walking up this kind of path, and I heard this, you know, what happened there? What are you doing here? Jamaican guy. And I said, what are you doing here? You know? And he just said to me, well, we can stay here for a while, and that's the way we are. You can throw us anywhere in the world, and we will plant our feet, we'll grow roots, and we'll stay. You want evidence? Look at the audience. All right. It's also about love. It's about women. It's about memory. It's about history. It's about a lot of things, right? I'm going to read a bit here because it's predominantly about women. The white English who read this book tend to say, boy, the women are scary. I said, well, they're just ordinary, you know. Yeah, but they think you know, these women are really scary. So I don't know about their women, but I would think that they're scary too. Anyway, this is about this boy, Pynter, who was born blind, and he's a strange child because he was born to die. He was born to die. He was not meant to live. And he's what we call a straddler in the Caribbean. I don't know, children who are born with a veil, a caul, a membrane over their eyes. They are said to be part spirit world, part real world. And I happen to know at least one member of my family who was a bit like that. You know, they hear things and see things, and he is like that, Pynter. But of course, there's more to it than that. And you get a sense of the characters, the women here, of Pynter, his brother Peter, and this is when the book turns and it begins to focus on the politics of the society in a way that I hope you will find interesting, and it's about the women as fighters. My mother was a boxer, a real one. If you look at me closely, you see this. I just made that up. Right. So I'll read a bit for you, okay? Pynter was telling Peter about planets and stars and numbers and distances so far and futile, the human mind could never hold them in. And did he know that there was a time when that moon up there used to be a lantern, before some bad-minded, too curious Italian fella named Galileo Galilei looked up at the moon through a piece of glass one night, and from then on, the moon got reduced to a little bit of rock. Pynter was about to tell him what a foolish fool Christopher Columbus was, and why, when he paused, made a little circle with his head and muttered softly, disbelievingly, "Uncle Birdie?" Peter stirred and looked at him. "Bread," Pynter said. "Bread just crossed my mind, and Uncle Birdie always smelled of bread." Uncle Birdie was in jail, by the way. It was an uncle who was in prison, a massive man. His mother's voice pushed its way into his thoughts. It came so sharp and urgent. It made Pynter's heart flip over. She was looking at Peter. His brother was staring past the grapefruit tree into the dark. "What happened?" Elena said. She spun around suddenly, prepared to fight off whatever it was that held Peter there, so rigid and wide-eyed. Nothing happened, not for a while. Not until a large, dark shape detached itself from the stool of bananas at the back end of the house. His aunt, Tansy, stood up with that strange smoothness of movement which always made it look as if she was helped up by some invisible hand. Pynter felt a new heat in his brother, smelt the fare there too. He turned to tell him not to worry, cause it was only Uncle Birdie, but his brother was no longer there. He glimpsed the pale shirt disappearing up the hill into the night, listened to the stiff thumping of Peter's heels on the earth before silence returned and settled on the yard. Birdie did not speak. With a movement that was almost as abrupt as Peter's, his mother, Elena, shifted the baby on her shoulder, and a sound came out of her. His aunt, Tansy, ran out of the yard. She returned almost as soon as she left with a shirt and a pair of trousers that she always kept for Birdie. Birdie remained where he was, his back against the darkness. He seemed to be waiting for something from them, some sound or gesture that would fill out the solid block of shadow that he was and make him flesh and blood. And when it came, it was almost tearful. "Come, son," Dika said. "Come, tell me." Tansy held up a chunk of burning wood before her, as if it were an offering. They noticed the dark mixture of blood that ran all the way down Birdie's shoulders to his fingers, the ripped trousers and khaki shirt hanging off him like torn banana leaves, the mud-caked pair of canvas shoes, the gold tooth glimmering through half-opened lips, his eyes just as large and luminous as Auntie Patty's. Dika reached out and took Elena's child from her. "Boil some water," she said. "Get a cloth. Bathe him." Now, the words that passed between the women were soft and taut and urgent. Pynter did not need to know what lay behind the small grunts from his aunt, the little cries of anger and surprise from Patty, the heavy silence of his mother. He listened to the water crashing down his uncle's body, turned his head up at the moon and wondered where Peter had gone to. Tansy called his name. Pynter rose to his feet and went to her. He did not look at his uncle's nakedness. He did not look at his mother either. From his aunt, this aunt of his who sat over him at nights and listened to him dreaming, who placed marbles in his hands and whispered unspeakable secrets in his ears, whose smell of eucalyptus oil and cinnamon was as much a part of her as a knife she carried somewhere on her person. From this aunt, he would know what the trouble was. Not the details yet, but something of its magnitude and weight. And it would not come from what she said, but from the adjustments in her breathing and all the things hands and eyes were doing. "Stay out here," Tansy gestured, and her gesture embraced all hope. And he understood that whatever the trouble his uncle had brought home to them, he, Pynter, must not sleep tonight. He listened to the shuffle of the women's feet on the floorboards, felt the slight change of pressure as the house adjusted to his uncle's weight. Stay out here. From as far back as he could remember, it had been this way. The awful things that had no name or words to them, the women always kept them to themselves. I'm going to skip